Condo buyers have a kind of a special circumstance in that they need a status certificate. Can you give us some tips as to what they should be looking for in a status certificate where they might be concerned?
Absolutely. When I'm taking a look at a status certificate, I'm looking at probably more than I need to be looking at, because there's two different looks you should be getting at a status certificate. You should be getting your lawyer to take a look at it, and you should be getting your accountant to take a look at it, because there's a lot of things that I'm going to see on the legal end of things. There's a lot of things that an accountant will see that only they'll be able to explain. But what am I looking at? I'm looking at whether or not there are any arrears of the condo fees. I am looking at whether or not the current condo unit owner has breached any rules, is required to fix anything.
Like if they've renovated without permission.
Exactly, and a lot of times you're not going to find that. A lot of times the condo is going to cover their behind when it comes to that and say, we haven't done an inspection, this still might be a problem. So it's a bit of a factory mill, the status certificate providers these days, because you'll usually have a management company taking care of it for the condo. I am looking for whether or not there's any litigation as well. Is the condo being sued? And that's not always a red flag. Maybe it is something that the condo's insurance policy is going to be covering, and the financial liability attaching to the unit owner is just the condo's premium going up. And when you divide that amongst the owners, it's not that big of a problem. There's other things that I can't get too much into, like the reserve fund, the budget, but there's certain red flags that I can certainly see. Has the reserve fund study been done recently? Now, the reserve fund, digging into it quickly, is just checking to see if the condo will be able to repair itself smoothly and within its own budget without too many increases.
Right. You've done this for one of our clients already. We had someone with a conditional offer on a condo. It's a relatively new building too. There was a big problem with the foundation leaking into the parking garage, and the estimated cost of that repair was fairly substantial. And you looked at the reserve fund and you said there's not enough money in here to do that and all the maintenance that's going to be required.
Yeah, I was looking at the financial part of it as a legal layperson, I guess, without the eyes of an accountant, but it was just so obvious in that case. I think it was obvious because the condo itself had said, we don't know how much it's going to cost and we have no idea how much we'll need, and that just sends out a red flag or 20, because you might have the common expenses increase, you might have special assessments take place.
Here in Hamilton, we have a lot of older neighborhoods, and we occasionally run into mutual driveways. Shared runs into a garage at the back that's shared by two neighbors, and when they get along, it's great. But mutual driveways can get a little complicated. Do you have any cautions from the legal side?
What you're saying is absolutely true. When things are going well, people are going to want to rely on the handshake agreement. They're going to want to say, hey, listen, I've been living beside this person for years. I love him so much. I don't want to ruin our relationship with a nasty legal agreement. And a lot of legal agreements can pull out some nasty conversations, but it really does depend on the people that you have representing you. You got to treat it as a plan for what happens when things go awry. It's definitely not expecting things to go awry, but you want to be able to reasonably sort that out when things are going well, so that you have a plan in motion. A lot of times with those mutual driveways, you'll have a scenario where one person owns a larger chunk and the other person just has a sliver. If you decide that handshake agreement is no longer on and you've got nothing registered on title, now you only have use of a small sliver if you were that person on that side, and you can't necessarily park on your lawn either, because the town or city might be upset by that, and you might have a work order placed on your property.
So you could find yourself with no way to get to your own garage.
Exactly, and you're not going to want that. It just makes sense to have something negotiated, and you want to talk about who can use the property, how they can use it, what they can do with it. Obviously, you can only park. You're going to want to set some rules up, and there's going to be some maintenance requirements, cost sharing, cost divisions. It doesn't need to be nasty, it just needs to be boring.
So with a mutual driveway in an old city, what you're looking for is clarity.
Exactly. I'm looking to see that there's a system in place and that both parties have been compliant for the most part.
Occasionally we'll deal with an estate sale where a family is having to dispose of a property. How long does it take to settle that, probate and all the things that come up with an estate sale?
Normally, if we're dealing with an estate, it's at least 2 to 3 months. That said, the sale cannot happen until that certificate is in place. You'll want a condition within the agreement as the seller, even as the buyer, to make sure that both sides are protected if something doesn't happen within a certain time. You might not always need that certificate though. If the property was owned by, let's say, 2 people jointly with a right of survivorship, if one of them passes away, you don't need to go to court to remove that person. You just need to go to the land registry office through your lawyer to remove that person. person and a lot simpler to deal with just a lawyer than to go through the court process. There's other narrow exceptions, but for the most part, you will want to consider whether or not you need that certificate either way. You might not need it for the property, but you might need it in general. So talk to your lawyers is the answer for the most part, but I would budget a few months to get that certificate just in case.
In your opinion, is it better to wait to put the house on the market after the certificate is issued?
Ideally, yes, but then when you're dealing with a market that could potentially go down, you might want to still put an offer in place and get a good condition in there so that you're protected and so that the buyer's protected as well, just so you get that price locked in.